Good day, Kavibal, and welcome to our YouTube webinar session. For the discussion today, the topic will be on equity and education through culturally responsive teaching. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com or eturo.org to generate your proof of attendance. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to all our Vibal webinars. Experience learning ka-Vibal! And now, to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. Dr. Shinette Cunanan Gonzalez is the founder, CEO, and president of Colorado Global Schools. She is the founder of Colorado Language Program, Colorado International Online School, and Colorado Statewide Charter School. She is also a director at Colorado Department of Education and cultural advisor of the U.S. Department of Defense Intelligence Unit. She's a Harvard law student, and she has over 22 school leadership and teaching experience in Asia and North America. She earned her bachelor's degree in St. Paul College in Quezon City, master's degree in the University of Northern Colorado, and doctorate degree from Queens College City, University of New York. She's an international author and speaker. She was invited to present her book and academic paper in Canada, Colombia, France, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Vietnam, and many states like New York, Florida, Georgia, and Nevada. She was even featured in local and national newspapers and magazines in the United States for helping many immigrants in the community. She is the Miss Colorado National Educators of America in 2021 to 2022. A devoted wife, mother and daughter, a silly friend, a loved teacher, the best school leader. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Shinette Cunanan Gonzalez.
Hi, friends. Good day, everyone. Today, we will be talking about a topic that many of us are interested in, and that is increasing equity with culturally responsive teaching. I hope we'll learn a lot from each other today. Let's get started. I would like to introduce myself. First, I'm Dr. Shinette Cunanan Gonzalez of Colorado Global Schools, or CGS. And under CGS, we have Colorado Language Program, Colorado International Online School, and Colorado Statewide Charter School. We offer adult education programs like ESL, GED, Basic Computer Literacy, Conversational Spanish and French, Notary, Immigration Assistance, Student Services, Tutorials, Teacher Training, and K-12 programs. I am very passionate with topics on culture, equity, and diversity. For today, we are going to discuss the factors that we deal with when we talk about culturally responsive teaching. Let's start with reflecting upon our own biases. When you see a lady with hijab, what would you think? Hijab is a head covering worn in public by some Muslim women. What would you say or do when you encounter a handicap on a wheelchair? What would you feel when you are sitting next to a dark-skinned man with curly hair on the plane? How about this is quite common, even like 50 years ago. If you are living or was born in Manila or NCR and you met a non-college degree holder and a lady from Cebu or from from Visayan region. So no matter how open-minded or accepting we believe ourselves to be, and no matter how good a job we think we are doing when it comes to raising tolerant children, this fact remains. We all carry prejudice and biases. I wish we are doing this in person so we could have more activities to reflect with our own biases. So let's start with a problem identification. Students come to school with different backgrounds, behavior, culture, ethnicity, languages, and values. Their attitudes and behaviors were molded from home by the family members. Research has shown that when cultural differences are ignored in classroom, diverse students feel a sense of alienation. And those are the authors that stated that oftentimes teachers are not aware that the culture, discipline, insights, learning environments, teaching methods and strategies, and curriculum are incompatible with the learning needs of students from different backgrounds. Students are increasingly ethnically and racially diverse. Just in Colorado during the 2017-2018 school year before the pandemic, the percentage of minority students was 43%, and the percentage of minority teachers was only 10%. Now, the minority students or the student of color is more than 55%, and the teachers is not even 20% as of this year. The ethnicity and race of students of District 6 schools are as follows: Hispanic, 59%, Caucasian, 35%, Asian, 2%, multiracial, 2%, African American Black, 2%, and American Indian, 1%. So we're not going to discuss more of these figures because most of you are in Asia, but this is just a good example. We know that culturally responsive teaching is relevant to educational excellence or achievement of students of culturally diverse backgrounds. Therefore, cultural awareness and culturally responsive training for school staff are very important. Teachers in Colorado need more help meeting the needs of and being culturally responsive to their students, many of whom now have roots in places like Mexico, Myanmar, and Somalia. Educators have significant control over their teaching and learning environment and the impact on the daily experiences of students. Schools make policy, curricular, and pedagogical decisions without careful considerations of the racial, ethnic, and cultural realities of the students and communities they serve. Cultural awareness and culturally responsive teaching will result in a lack of students' trust in school. You might wonder, okay, she's talking about students and teachers and schools in Colorado. But culture is not about your ethnicity, your race, your language, also your family backgrounds. I was born in the Philippines, but we do have different backgrounds. We do have different traditions and values. Students may interpret the school environment as unwelcoming and thus unworthy of a meaningful personal investment, making their academic achievement much more unlikely. And Delpit in 2006 suggested that CLD students may even respond to what they perceive as inhospitable school environments with behaviors that are oppositional to the prevailing norms and values of the school. Culture plays a significant role in teaching and learning. Student diversity challenges us to explore ways to bridge cultural differences and develop culturally sensitive teaching practices that recognize and accept these differences. Teachers, not only students, react and behave in ways that reflect their culture. It is undeniable and seen that cultural differences such as food, religion, holidays, arts, and clothing are noticeable. There are also differences in understanding about family and education that can affect the teacher-student relationships and might interfere with the academic achievement of students. Let's do definition of terms. Let's define what is culture. Culturally responsive teaching, culturally responsive instruction or CRI, cultural awareness, cultural competency. So Delgado, Gaitan, and Truba in 1991 defined that culture refers to a dynamic system of social values, cognitive codes, behavioral standards, worldwide views, and beliefs used to give order and meaning to our own lives as the life of others. That's also according to Gay in 2002. For example, my behavioral standard for my child is different from the behavioral standard of my neighbors, of my further children. So like what said, it is not culture. We don't have just one culture in each country. We have a lot, and also starts at home with your family members. Everyone has a culture. It can be one's language, food, community, religion, and traditions. How about culturally responsive teaching? It recognizes the importance of including students' cultural references in all aspects of learning, enriching classroom experiences, and keeping students engaged. How about Gay in 2000 defines culturally responsive teaching as using the cultural knowledge, prior experiences, and performance styles of diverse students to make learning more appropriate and effective for them. It teaches to and through the strengths of these students. Culturally responsive instruction, or CRI, is using knowledge of students' cultures and modalities to select and apply strategies and resources for instruction while engaging in self-reflection. So even with our lesson plans, with our curriculum, it needs to be culturally responsive to the students' cultures and background. Cultural awareness recognizes that we are all shaped by our cultural background, which influences how we interpret the world around us, perceive ourselves, and relate to other people. You don't need to be an expert in every culture or have all the answers to be culturally aware. Rather, cultural awareness helps you to explore cultural issues with your care recipients more sensitively. According to Colorado Department of Education, culturally proficient means valuing diversity. We do have over 200 languages here in Greeley, just in the city of Greeley, here in Colorado. So it means we do have over 200 countries' culture that could be 1,000 different backgrounds. Having the capacity for cultural self-assessment, like what is our own biases, our prejudice, managing the dynamic of differences, having institutionalized cultural knowledge, having developed adaptation to service, curriculum delivery, reflecting an understanding of cultural diversity. Cultural competency is more than a simple set of tips and techniques for dealing with different kinds of people. It can be learned and practiced, but it cannot happen in just one day. Cultural competency in education requires well implemented organizational policies, appropriately trained and skilled leaders and teachers, and specialized resources and technologies from Kogler in 2012. Now, what is the importance of culturally responsive teaching? According to gradeschools.org, the Census Bureau projects that by year 2100, the U.S. minority population will become the majority with non-Hispanic whites making up only 40% of the U.S. population. This means that teachers should be culturally aware and apply culturally responsive teaching. However, a 2007 study by Public Agenda and the National Comprehensive Center for Teacher Quality found that 76% of new teachers say they were to teach an ethnically diverse student body, but fewer than 4 to 10 say their training helps them deal with the challenges they face. Culturally, diversity in the United States is increasing. They help refugees from different countries and accept immigrants from all over the world. Thus, there is a high percentage of minority students in each classroom. Successful schools and effective educators know that it is essential that the lesson plan is responsive to the cultures of the students. For example, you then know that you have 5 Buddhist students and you have 6 Islam students. I believe we don't really pray in school anymore, which I am not really sure. I'm sure in the public school they are not. But you have to be mindful in how you display your beliefs, your faith, and making sure that it's not mentioned in any of your lesson plan, text, and curriculum. Classroom studies document the fact that underserved English learners, poor students, and students of color routinely receives less instruction in higher order skills development than the other students. One example is in District 6 here in Colorado. There are 54 languages noted in 2017, but actually there are over 200 languages spoken. It means there are at least 50 diverse cultures, 5 ethnic groups, and around 12 different kinds of religion present in the school District 6. They have immigrants from Africa, Asia, Europe, Middle East, South America, and also have refugees from over 17 countries. Thus, it is imperative that teachers apply culturally responsive teaching. The district school should check the level of cultural proficiency of educational leaders and staff. It is important to be aware of different cultures, and it would be advantageous. It's going to be an advantage if some school staff are knowledgeable of at least 2 languages aside from Spanish and English. There are teachers and staff in District 6 here that speak Spanish that can accommodate them. But it's not only Spanish. We do have Somali language. We do have Arabic, French. Understanding culture. Culture, it turns out, is the way that every brain makes sense of the world. That makes sense, right? That is why everyone, regardless of race or ethnicity, has a culture, according to Hammond in 2015. Culture is a network of knowledge consisting of learned routines, thinking, feeling, and interacting with other people, as well as corpus of substantive assertions and ideas about aspects of the world. The first step to becoming culturally responsive is to pay attention to the symbolic or deep level of culture. Understanding your own culture first. Educators need to recognize how their own individual culture, their prism of viewing the world, impacts their interaction. We need to examine our own cultural identity. Learning about one's culture or making familiar strange, as anthropologist George Spindler calls it, is far more challenging than learning about the culture of others. With the teacher's own values, backgrounds, and culture, it will be important to understand how will it affect his or her approach to the students. The hardest culture to examine is often our own because it shapes our action in ways that seem invisible and normal. Teachers must reflect their own culture and values. Culturally responsive teaching calls for teachers to take the emotional risks, to examine the deeply held beliefs that influence how they respond to students. And I have personal and professional examples, stories about that, about my own culture, my own biases. Teachers must analyze and reflect on their own biases and be prepared to handle culturally diverse students. Identifying the student's background. Understanding how students interpret language is also important. Research on teaching culture has shown that language and culture are closely related. Like all human beings, culturally diverse students need to belong. Remember, according to Maslow in 1970, at the same time, the Department of Education and district schools must consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs of teachers and students and staff, actually teachers and staff recruitment, training to benefit the students. For physiological needs, the district school should consider giving the teachers enough time for lesson planning, lesson preparation, having a comfortable working conditions, reasonable work hours and breaks, to use the bathroom and eat. For safety needs, the school district's human resources department should provide an attractive salary and great benefits for the employees and their families, which we don't see teachers getting rich with money by relying to the salary. This is all over the world. Human resources need to make sure that there are safe working conditions for teachers and staff. For love and belonging, this is according to Maslow's um, hierarchy of needs. There should be community and social groups for teachers, since this is also considered as social needs. It is important for people. So, what are the examples? On my first year of teaching in the Philippines, I was teaching fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. I still remember in fourth grade class, I was teaching health subject, and I was teaching them the importance of taking a shower every day or being clean, about hygiene. And I was a 20-year-old fresh graduate, first year teacher, and I asked the class, I stated first, I said like, so it is important to be clean, to take a shower every day, brush your teeth every day. Everybody takes a shower every day, right? And All of them are just looking at me. And I said, who among here does not take a shower every day? It was really a bad call. One student raised her hand and said, I don't take a shower every day. It's because my mom said that if I have my monthly period, I should not take a shower. So I did not research, I did not study first each of my students' background. How about in India? We're not sure if it is their religion or just a tradition or part of their culture that they don't wash their hair on Thursday. Well, others think that it is unhealthy to wash or take a shower when a woman has her monthly period. All traditions in China believe that you will have a longer life if you do not shower or wash when it's very cold or during winter. There's also an incident and report here in Colorado that in one of the district schools, a parent filed a complaint because a teacher consistently used inappropriate language when addressing her son in class. The teacher defended herself that she did not have intentions to insult the student, but for the parent, the language used is improper and they do not use that at home. Teaching is above all a linguistic activity, and language is at the very heart of teaching. That's according to Smith in 1971. And then it was stated in Gay's culturally responsive teaching book, whether making assignments, giving directions, explaining events, interpreting words and expressions, proving propositions, justifying decisions and actions, making promises, dispersing praise and criticism, or assessing capability, teachers must use language. In some cultures, like in Thailand, I taught in Thailand for 14 years. I was told by the principal that I should not use a red pen to check and correct test papers. Is it our traditional way of checking papers using the red pen? While other teachers suggested avoiding correcting verbal language during conversation. There are several norms and cultures in different countries that are so different from our own. Thus, we should always be careful and do our own research. And now I'm using a green pen. I'm avoiding to use a red pen because not only in Thailand culture, but also in Spanish or especially Mexican culture, that using a red pen is a no-no, even if you are a teacher. Know and value each individual. Educators must have knowledge of children's lives outside of school so as to recognize their strengths. This according to Delpit. We're all different and unique. By acknowledging and accepting our cultural differences, we can view other as beautiful. When we learn to value the perspectives of students and their families, our classrooms, our schools, and our communities thrive. If we remain mired in our own assumptions, we miss the lessons from a South African grandmother, or the student as pizza deliverer, or the student sitting in our classrooms, waiting to be valued. We must appreciate the differences or the difference among us. To teach subject matter in meaningful ways and engage students in learning, teachers need to know about their students' lives. We are not suggesting that teachers learn generic information about specific cultural or social groups. Such thinking leads to stereotypes that do not apply to individual students. Like my son, he stereotyped me as Asian Filipino that eats rice all the time, and his dad eats tortilla and beans all the time with a Hispanic blood. Instead, teachers need to know something about their students' families, makeup, immigration history, favorite activities, concerns, and strengths. Teachers should also be aware of their students' perceptions of the value of school knowledge, their experiences with the different subject matters in everyday settings, and their prior knowledge of their experience with specific topics in the curriculum. Valuing diversity. Valuing diversity. If diverse cultures are represented in the classroom, the teacher will find a wealth of opportunities to help children become aware of cultural differences and to understand that no culture is better or worse than any other. That's from Little Soldier in 1989. The district schools here have a diversity committee, but they do not have a diversity recruitment committee. They go to state job fairs and have not considered going to original job fairs to recruit minority teachers. Only 10% of Colorado teachers are minorities until today, actually less than, while more than 50% state students belong to minority groups. And that's from research and journals, especially from chalkbeat.org. Researchers believe that having diverse and minority teachers will help improve the cultural awareness and develop culturally responsive teaching in schools. So we have a lot of Filipino and Asian students here. So we do need a lot of Asian teachers, school staff. Colorado schools should develop a plan and strategy in hiring and retaining minority teachers and staff. They should plan enough resources and funds to recruit minority teachers. Also, district schools must offer support or guarantee a non-stereotype work environment for minority teachers. Most educational institutions say that they value diversity. They have at least one minority teacher or staff in the office. In today's classroom, teachers are required to educate students varying in culture, language, abilities, and many other characteristics. As more and more students from diverse backgrounds populate 21st century classrooms, and efforts mount to identify effective methods to teach the students, the need for approaches that are culturally responsive intensifies. Teachers need to have activities where children, students work together, drawing and presenting different places in the world. There should be a day that students will wear their traditional clothes to school. We do that in Thailand. Every Friday, we wear our national costume or our traditional clothes. Teachers should plan to ask culturally diverse students to show in class how they make their food. We do that here in Colorado, in our schools. Caring for the students. Gay said genuinely caring teachers are academic taskmasters. I always describe myself as a caring teacher. Caring is a foundational pillar of effective teaching and learning. The lack of it produces inequities in educational opportunities and achievement outcomes for ethnically different students. Culturally responsive teachers build trust with their students based from care and trust. If the teacher cares about the student, he or she would find time to know and understand the culture and apply culturally responsive teaching. To be culturally responsive is to be sensitive, aware and capable of employing learning patterns, perspectives, family structure, multiple worldviews, and tribal languages. And being aware and sensitive to the culture means caring. Transforming the classroom. Teachers should read stories and folktales written by African American and Native Indians. The bulletin board should show different cultures, traditions, and celebrations. Books written by different nationalities should be available in the classroom from Spanish, Mexico, Filipino, Asian, Vietnamese, all the nationalities. There are 200 over 200 countries, and research and check how many cultures, traditions among in the classroom or present in the classroom. Stories and examples in the lesson should reflect different ethnicities. Sometimes I wore African clothes to school. We talk about the fine grain of cotton found in Africa and how expensive it is. So the children began to wear African clothes and draw African people and feel proud of themselves. That's according to Hollins in 1999. District schools in Colorado celebrate Native American culture, Hispanic festivals, African celebrations, Irish like St. Patrick's Days, and many more. Culturally responsive teaching training. This is not just for one day. Building relationships with families and community. Effective strategies for learning about students' lives outside school include conducting home visits, which we do that here, creating opportunities in the classroom for students to discuss their aspirations, their ambitions for the future, posing problems for students to solve and noting how each student goes about solving them, and talking with parents and the community members. That's according to Villegas in 2007. School night and family day are also part of the school activity schedule. Take the opportunity to have informal talks with the parents. Try to observe how they socialize with the community. And sometimes seeing the students how they interact with their families would help an educator understand different kinds of student behavior. Invite family members to share some facts about their culture. Both teachers and students will learn from this activity. But never have pre-assumptions. You may expand your cultural knowledge before and after a family member shares stories about their culture, but do not assume. Everybody is different. Like Muslims, not all of them wear the black veils or the hijab, or not all Asians like Chinese food or eat rice. I'm starting not to eat rice anymore. It's not because I don't want that culture about our food, but it's because of health. Since there is an increasing in percentage of immigrants and refugees coming to the United States, schools should provide support and more activities for the families. And I believe there are also a lot of immigrants or foreigners coming to the Philippines because their parents have job assignments over there. And some might be in the public schools or state universities. So schools should provide support and more activities for the family. Some schools offer free ESL evening classes for the parents. So I hope there in the Philippines or in your country, some schools will provide language courses for the parents or for the guardians. We provide more resources like language arts and US history books to students. We give information about the public library and immigrant support groups. I'm hoping that we will have a lot of public libraries in the Philippines. Culturally responsive teaching principles. Holland suggested that principles to guide culturally responsive teaching. Culturally and linguistically different students learn best when teachers use students' prior knowledge as a foundation in the teaching and learning process. Secondly, classroom practices are compatible with the students' language patterns, cognitive functioning, motivation, and the social norm and structures to which they are accustomed. Third, assessment practices and procedures reflect the diversity of student strengths and an appreciation of multiple intelligence. Fourth, the attitudes, beliefs, and actions of the school model respect for cultural diversity. Fifth, teachers value cultural knowledge, view students as assets, and integrate them into classroom instruction. The language is very important. Our language culture, even with um marriage, like husband and wife came from different countries, different culture. My personal experience with that of how we use the language. He would say, "I don't care," and when we hear the word "I don't care," it's like you don't care, but what they meant is I don't mind, right? So for me as Asian, that is offensive, that's negative. For them, it's positive, it's same as I don't mind. With the culturally responsive teaching principles, the state and schools should focus in reviewing the curriculum to integrate cultural knowledge in the lessons. Although an examination of the problem associated with designing, implementing, evaluating an educational curriculum that is culturally responsive for students is likely to spark heated discussion and provide a first-hand view of the obstacles to educational reform. So another example that I want to share is the eraser, the pencil eraser, right? We call it eraser, but some call it rubber. And when we say rubber, it's like the rubber band, or other cultures, the word rubber is maybe a condom, right? So the language is not mainly, but very important in assessing or knowing about each other's culture. So, for conclusion, for culturally responsive teaching, culture is so much more than the color of a student's skin. Culture is about family life, religion, home life, and socioeconomic status. It is about who the students are and where they fit in their community and society as well, as a whole. Given the diversity of today's public school classroom, most teachers do not apply culturally responsive teaching. Our success and future lies in the hands of children. Gay in 2000 stated children are our most valuable resource and an investment for the future. They are far more precious than limitless amounts of money, unchallenged fame, or the most expensive gems. Therefore, we must give the best education for them to be successful. And since there is an increasing number of culturally diverse students in each school, educators must apply culturally responsive teaching to reduce the achievement gap. To be culturally responsive, one must understand their own culture, identify the student's background, value each individual, respect diversity, and celebrate the contribution of cultural or ethnic groups in our community. Educators should be culturally self aware, reflect who they are, and know their family background, community, and status in the society. Educators should also be knowledgeable of a student's culture so that they will not, I'm sorry. So, educators, they need to know their own culture so that they will be knowledgeable of students' culture. They can understand the behavior in the classroom. They must be self aware. It is also essential to implement culturally responsive teaching in the curriculum and teachers' professional development training. Culturally proficient teachers should be part of the meetings in choosing the textbook to meet the needs of diverse students. The primary method of imparting information to students is the textbook. It has been said that schools depend too heavily on textbooks. It is important for us educators to assess each other's culture, our biases. Talk to the students often, know their interests so that you will know the teaching strategies. Now, very quick about equity and equality. Equity and equality lead to excellent education. However, establishing equity in public schools is controversial and challenging. Starting from eliminating barriers based on culture, race, socioeconomic status, and disabilities to providing educational opportunities to every child. Quality education means quality teachers, quality resources, and quality instructions. All these factors have social, political, and economic influences to build excellence through equity and equality. So now, what are you going to do differently as an educator? As an excellent educator, I will be caring, knowledgeable, and apply culturally responsive teaching. I always do. I always have a genuine and deep concern for each child, for each of my students. It's like for each of my teachers and staff. Everyone in my class will feel valued, happy, and content. I will always motivate and inspire my students. As much as possible, there will be no students in my class that will fall behind because of their race, religion, or socioeconomic status. Our Vice President, Fatia, in Colorado Global Schools, is a Muslim, and we're best friends. I'm a devoted Catholic. One of our vice president is a Christian pastor. We're all best friends. We all respect each other. My classroom will be a safe environment for every student. Students will have the opportunity of personal and educational development. I will be culturally proficient. I should know the demographics, race and ethnicity, family background, religion, and interests of my students. I love celebrating birthdays, but I always check which student has are either Mormons or Jehovah's Witness. I believe Jehovah's Witness it's offensive for them when we celebrate birthdays. So I'll need to make sure that I will not have a party on one of my students' birthday because it's offensive for their religion. What can you do as an educational leader to support other educators to become more focused on equity? As an educational leader, I will be responsible and I am responsible that time, instruction, and money for the students are utilized properly and money for the students are utilized effectively. I will also make sure that teachers have culturally responsive approaches and strategies. I will create a positive, safe, and healthy environment for students and teachers. The student that I'm working or I will be working has welcoming atmosphere. We do have a welcoming atmosphere here. I am a model of respectful language and behavior to staff, students, and the community. The teaching strategies, curriculum, and instructional materials will reflect the diversity and cultures of all students in my school. I check, observe, and monitor teachers' cultural proficiency and instructional strategies systematically. I encourage them to be at their best all the time in the classroom. I give incentives to teachers so that they will be motivated to be better and go beyond, above and beyond to ensure students' success and happiness in school. Equity in education is, like what I said, courage is the mother of all virtues because without it, you cannot consistently perform the others. That's from Aristotle. And I like that. So what is equity in education? Equity in education is when every student receives the resources needed to acquire the basic skills of reading, writing, and simple mathematics. What is the argument about equity in education? It is the right thing to do. Our society shares a moral obligation to make sure that every child gets what she or he needs to succeed in education. So, what should we do as educators? Knowing that the most advantaged and successful students do even better in an equitable school setting. Please remember that. So, how do we achieve greater equity? It requires the following. Okay, declared goal, committed relationship, leadership. Struggling students must be supported. Ongoing professional development for teachers and staff, careful selection and retention of staff, remember the social emotional needs of students, responding to parental concerns, and personalized learning. That's a cultural responsive teaching. So education, experience, time, effort, loyalty, skills, abilities, and commitment. At Colorado Global Schools, in my school, personalized learning means creating engaging learning experiences customized to each student's needs and interests. Our students daily make important decisions about their learning experiences, how they will create and apply knowledge, and how they will demonstrate their learning. Okay, so let's just read and browse this quickly. And this is my contact information if you have any questions. We do have teacher training, um, conferences, PDs. So again, my name is Shanette Tunanan Gonzalez. Our website is cgsi.us and my email address is principal@coloradoschool.org. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you for being here and hope to discuss with you all again.
There we have it. In behalf of Ibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this indeed very eye-opening, timely, and insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, ma'am. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to all our daily learning session. Don't forget to register to get your e-certificate of participation. We also encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Vival Facebook and YouTube channel. If you have any questions for our speaker for this afternoon, you may send them a message or post your questions in the link posted in our comment section. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.